Good morning and thanks for joining us on the Thursday edition of TVC Breakfast. Let's bring you the news update at this time. An aide to Mali's Vice President, Colonel Assimi Goïta, has announced the resignation of the country's interim president and prime minister 2 days after they were arrested by the military. This is despite the visit and intervention by a delegation of ECOWAS still in Mali. Now, the international community had anticipated that the arrest and detention of president and prime minister would lead to this, and this may lead to sanctions being imposed on the West African country. President Emmanuel Macron has described the political crisis as a coup within a coup. Now the Vice President, Colonel Assimi Goïta, is now in charge of the country. He also led the coup in August 2020 against elected President Boubacar Keïta. This may derail the 18-month transition to democracy, even though the military vice president has promised to continue with the transition government and conduct elections next year. He blames President Bardo for violating the transitional charter by failing to consult him about the new cabinet constituted on Monday. He is also accusing the government of not handling negotiations with trade unions well, which resulted in a nationwide strike. Now, strategy consultant Dikbo Oyewole joins me via Zoom to talk about developments in Mali. Dikbo, good morning. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good morning, Veronica.
Now, you would recall that Kati military base is notorious for ending the rule of Malian leaders. Last August, the military took President Keïta there and forced him to resign. And then the president this time around and the prime minister were also taken there. So did this resignation come to you as a surprise?
Yes, it did, because you could tell that the resignation was forced. And I believe that the vice president, who is now the man in charge, needs to be called to order, because that is his clear objective. He wants to be the man in charge. If he said that he had any issues with how they went about the cabinet and all of that, it's something you have a conversation with. That is part of what a democracy is. You don't get to have different coups within a coup. I mean, this is the second coup in 9 months. It's not even 12 months yet. Okay, this is the second coup, and we need to be very, very careful with this Mali situation. From the first coup, I've said this, that we need to be very careful, because Mali is another nation on the continent that has a very strategic location. I mean, it borders like 7 nations. Mauritania, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Guinea, Burkina Faso. Most importantly, I say most importantly because it affects us, they also border Niger Republic. Okay, and God forbid there is any form of serious instability in Mali, it will spill over to these countries. If it gets into Niger, it connects with Libya. And who do you think is going to get the brunt of it? It's going to be Nigeria. So aside from looking at it from the potential impacts to have on the continent of Africa, we also need to look at it from our own self-preservation angle. That something needs to be done, and it needs to be done urgently. I would say that they learn to, or they see how they can manage the vice president to ensure that this doesn't escalate into something that causes a serious instability.
How can they do that? Dikbo, how can they do that? Because you would recall that there was a delegation of ECOWAS members that are even still in the country who tried to bring about some stabilization. And you would recall that there was an agreement that led to a new president and prime minister. And we are still seeing all of these coups. So how do we ensure that we keep the vice president where he needs to be?
Well, I believe that they make their presence known and they stay in country. If it requires them staying till the time the elections will be conducted, I think they need to do that.
That's 2022.
If it requires consistent dialogue with him.
That's 2022. The elections are supposed to be held in 2022.
Yes, because he needs that diplomatic pressure. He needs the diplomatic pressure, or else we find out that 2022 comes and then we're back here again. That the elections don't hold, and then he comes up with another excuse, and then he's another dictator for another 2 decades. So he needs to have the strong diplomatic pressure from the AU, from the ECOWAS, from every leader that has a stake in this, which is every leader on the African continent. Because it's very important that we keep the pressure up. Because Mali, we cannot afford to have a destabilized Mali. We just cannot afford it. We cannot afford this as a nation, Nigeria, and most importantly, we cannot afford this as a continent of Africa. So it is very important that they manage this diplomatic situation very, very well.
But do you see that strength coming from AU, ECOWAS to ensure that they can pressurize this vice president? Can you see that from their body language and all of what is happening, even across West Africa? Have they proven that they have that strong diplomatic presence?
Unfortunately not, okay? Unfortunately not. In the last couple of years, we've been complaining about the AU and how they've been choosing to conduct their business. They've been a bit laid back with a lot of issues that you would expect to be at the front burner. But I believe that with what we're talking about now, talking about that we do not want a destabilized Mali, I would expect that they approach this with some sense of urgency and some sense of responsibility, and also see how they can address these issues with a lot more vigor, as opposed to how they've been handling other issues before. Because either they like it or not, what affects Mali affects everyone on the continent at this point. So yes, with the track record in recent times, I would say that I'm not necessarily optimistic, but frankly speaking, they are our only option. They are our only option, and we just have to hope that they can get this job done by putting a lot of diplomatic pressure on him.
And when you're talking about diplomatic pressure, paint us a picture of what you're talking about beyond the conversation and being there.
I mean, if it requires having weekly meetings with him to ensure that things are on track, so this is why I think that he would agree to that. You remember that the first coup that happened 9 months ago,
right,
it was approached as a move for the people, even though it was done by the hands of the military. Yeah. So I believe that he still wants to have that sort of legitimacy of government and of purpose. So if that requires him to appear to be transparent, I believe that he would want to accede to that. So if it requires having a small delegation in country that would have weekly meetings with him to get updates on what he intends to do, how he's running the government, and how he's working towards having the elections in 2022, I believe that he should be able to assent to that, and he should be given strong conditions as well. But it is important that we do not want any military intervention in Mali. I'll keep emphasizing it. We do not want any serious instability in terms of security in Mali.
But we have seen that it seems the people are tilting towards having or they want a military regime in the country, because it seems that they believe that the military can bring that stability to the country. I wonder what you make of that.
So I would ask that, how did we come about that? Was there a consensus made, or is it a conversation from a pocket, a handful of people, maybe put on camera? Because I think with a conversation like this, it would only make sense if, maybe, for example, the ECOWAS delegation and the AU delegation are saying what you're saying now and say that, okay, no problem. Maybe you want to have a referendum. Choose for yourself. Do you want a military government, or do you want a civilian democratic government? Let the people choose for themselves. Let the process be transparent. Let the ECOWAS and the AU delegation, let them have people on ground to ensure that the referendum is done very well, and it is done fairly and in a transparent manner.
But why I am saying this, sorry to cut into your line of thoughts, is the fact that the people had high hopes when Ibrahim Boubacar Keita was there, but then they waited for so long and didn't get the dividends of democracy from him, and they seemingly seem to embrace now what the military brought to the table, except for the coups.
Yes, so it is usually like that. You'd agree with me that so having a change of guard in that sense, now it looks good. Are they sure it's still going to look good in the next 20 years, in case it doesn't leave the place? Because now, for me, I'm more concerned about the long-term approach to this entire Mali situation, which you will not blame the people if, for some reason, they are not looking at it from the same lens as we are, as outsiders, because they are the ones feeling the heat of it. If the former president didn't do very well, and then the military now seems to be giving them a semblance of what they have requested for, of course they would say they want the military government, and that is what the military leader would also do, to also get some form of legitimacy with whatever he's doing right now. But the question is, long term, will this be what they want? Or will we be ending up with another coup in 2024, 2025? Because people will then say that, okay, the military government that came in 2021 is no longer serving their purpose. They need a sustainable system, not just something that plays to the tune of whatever emotion they're feeling at the moment. They need a sustainable system. If you have a democratic rule that isn't doing well, what you do is you vote them out. You don't cool them out. You vote them out. That is what you do. So I think that from a country that has had a democratic process in place up until a few months ago, I think that they need to go back there and see how they can get their country together. Democracy is a journey, it's not a destination. But I think that they need to do it and do it together as a people and the people of Mali.
All right. Strategy consultant Dikpo Oyewole, thank you for your time on the program.
Thank you for having me.